The trees of Cairo 7 stretched up into the sky like giant green towers. Their trunks were so wide that 20 humans holding hands could not wrap around them. The leaves glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Commander Hyanwu stood at the edge of the human settlement and looked up at the endless canopy above. 6 months had passed since they first landed on this strange moon, and he still felt small beneath these ancient giants. "Sir, the morning." "Report is ready," said Chief Engineer Sa Young as she walked up beside him. Her uniform was already dirty from working on the power generators since dawn. Hyanwu nodded, but kept looking up. "Do you ever feel like we're being watched, Sa Young?" She followed his gaze to the glowing branches high above. "The trees do seem alive in ways our computers can't measure. Dr. Yunhee thinks they might be connected somehow." "Connected how?" "She's not sure yet. But the energy readings suggest the entire forest might be one big network, like a brain made of trees." Hyanwu frowned. The idea made him uncomfortable. Humans were used to being the most intelligent life on any world they visited. The thought that they might be living inside something smarter than them was troubling. High above in the canopy, something moved between the glowing leaves. It was quick and silent, like a shadow with purpose. The creature paused on a thick branch and looked down at the 2 humans below. Its eyes were large and golden, designed for seeing in the dim light of the forest floor. Its body was covered in fur that changed color to match the bark and leaves around it. To human eyes, it was nearly invisible. This was Whispering Leaves. And he had been watching the humans since the day they arrived. Whispering Leaves belonged to the Silvani, a people who had lived in these trees for thousands of years. They were skilled hunters and wise observers, but they had one rule above all others: never interfere with younger species. The Silvani had watched many different kinds of life come and go on their world. Some had been peaceful, others violent. Some had been smart, others simple. All had eventually left or died out, and the Silvani had learned that it was better to watch than to get involved. But these humans were different. Whispering Leaves had seen other species face challenges on Cairo 7, the electromagnetic storms that came with the planet's strange seasons. Had destroyed the technology of many visitors. Most gave up and left when their machines stopped working. Some fought among themselves over the remaining resources. A few had tried to cut down the sacred trees for materials. The humans had done something else entirely. When their communication arrays had been damaged by the first big storm, they had worked together to build new ones. When their solar panels couldn't work properly under the thick canopy, they had learned to use the bioluminescent energy from the trees themselves. When team members had gotten sick from eating the wrong plants, they had cared for each other and studied the local ecosystem to find safe food sources. Most surprising of all, when young colonist Minho had suggested they were harming the forest, by taking too many resources, the humans had actually listened. They had changed their entire approach to work with the environment, instead of against it. Whispering Leaves had never seen anything like it. He moved silently through the branches, following the humans as they went about their daily work. Security. Chief Tae Min was training a group of colonists in basic defense. Dr. Yoon-hee was studying soil samples near the river. Engineer So-young was trying to fix a water purifier that had broken down again. What fascinated Whispering Leaves most was how they helped each other. When one person had a problem, others would stop their own work to help. When someone made a mistake, they would teach instead of punish. When food was scarce, they would share what they had instead of hoarding it. The Silvani had always been a practical people. They survived by being careful, by not taking risks, by following the old ways. But watching the humans made Whispering Leaves question some of those old ways as the day went on. Whispering Leaves noticed something unusual happening in the settlement below. The humans were gathering around their communication center, and they looked worried. He moved closer, using his natural camouflage to remain unseen. "Are you sure about these readings?" Commander Hyanwu was asking. Dr. Yoon-hee nodded grimly. "The long-range sensors don't lie. It's a fleet, and it's headed this way. How long do we have?" 3 days, maybe 4 if they stop to refuel at the asteroid belt." Whispering Leaves felt a chill run through his fur. He recognized the energy signatures Dr. Yoon-hee was describing. The hegemony had found this place. The hegemony was an empire that had been spreading across the galaxy for centuries. They conquered worlds not to live on them, but to strip them of resources. They enslaved the species they found, or simply eliminated them if they were too much trouble. The Sylvani had hidden from them before, using their camouflage and the protection of the deep forest to remain undetected. But the humans had been sending radio signals and using active sensors. They had been making noise that could be heard. Across space, the hegemony had followed that noise here. "Can we evacuate?" asked Tae-Min. Hyenwoo shook his head. "Our ships don't have enough fuel for a long journey. The refinery won't be ready for another month. What about sending a distress signal to Earth? The Kumare is still damaged from the last storm. We can receive signals, but we can't send anything strong enough to reach human space." Whisper and Leaves watched as the humans absorbed this information. They were trapped on Cairo 7 with no way to escape and no way to call for help. The hegemony fleet would arrive in 3 days, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. But instead of panicking or giving up, the humans began to plan. "We need to get the civilians to safety," Hyenwoo said. "The deep forest might hide them from orbital sensors. We'll start working on portable shelters," So Young offered. "We should also prepare what defenses we can," Taemin added. "Even if we can't win, we can make them pay for every inch." Dr. Yoonhee looked thoughtful. There might be another option. "My research into the forest network suggests the trees themselves might be able to carry information. If we could tap into that system, that's a big if," Hyenwoo replied. "And even if it works, we'd need someone to interface with an alien system we don't understand." "I'll do it," said a voice from behind them. They turned to see pilot Dong Ho approaching. "If there's a chance to save everyone, I'll take the risk." Whisper and Leaves felt something stir in his chest as he listened to their conversation. These humans were facing certain death, but they were not thinking about themselves. They were thinking about how to save others, how to protect their people, how to send a warning to their homeworld. In all his years of watching, Whisper and Leaves had never seen courage like this, as the humans continued their planning. Whisper and Leaves made his way back to the highest branches of the canopy. He needed to think about what he had learned. The laws of his people were clear. Do not interfere with younger species. Let them find their own way or fail on their own terms. But as he looked down at the humans working together in the face of impossible odds, Whispering Leaves began to wonder if some laws were meant to be broken. The first day of humanity's final test on Cairo 7 was ending. Above them, hidden in the glowing branches, a silent watcher was making a decision that would change everything. 3 days until the hegemony arrived. 3 days for the humans to prepare for a battle they could not win. 3 days for Whisper and Leaves to decide whether he would remain a silent observer or become something more. The second day began before dawn. Commander Hyenwoo stood in the center of New Seoul, the human settlement that had become their home among the giant trees. Round him, his people worked with desperate energy. Everyone knew what was coming, but no one spoke of giving up. "Status report," Hyenwoo called out as Chief Engineer So Young approached with her tablet. "The shield generators are working at 60% capacity," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I've rerouted power from non-essential systems, but it won't be enough to stop a full orbital bombardment." "How long will they hold?" "Maybe 2 hours if we're lucky. The hegemony uses plasma cannons that can punch through military-grade shields. Ours are just colony protection units." Hyenwoo nodded grimly. 2 hours was better than nothing, but it wouldn't save them. He looked around at the settlement that had taken 6 months to build. In less than 2 days, it would all be gone. Security Chief Taemin jogged up to them. "The evacuation plans are ready. We can move all non-essential personnel to the deep forest bunkers within 12 hours. Good. Start with the families and medical staff. Scientists and engineers stay until the last moment. What about the defense positions? Set them up along the river line. Make them work for every kilometer." High above in the canopy, Whisper and Leaves watched the frantic activity below. The humans moved like insects preparing for winter, but there was no panic in their movements. Even facing certain death, they remained organized and calm. He had spent the night thinking about what he had witnessed. The laws of his people were ancient and wise. They had kept the Sylvani safe for thousands of years. But watching the humans prepare to sacrifice themselves for each other made those laws feel cold and empty. Whispering Leaves was not the only one watching. Sylvani observers had been assigned to monitor the human settlement. They reported back to the Council of Elders, who made decisions for their people. The council had been very clear. The humans were not their concern. Whatever happened in the coming battle, the Sylvani would remain hidden and safe. But as Whispering Leaves watched a human father teaching his young daughter how to use an emergency beacon, he wondered if safety was worth the price of watching good people die down in the settlement. Dr. Yoon-hee was making a discovery that would change everything. She had been studying the forest network for months, trying to understand how the trees communicated with each other. The bioluminescent patterns in the bark were not random. They were signals carrying information through the forest faster than any human communication system. "Oh, this is incredible," she whispered to her research assistant, a young scientist named Jiwoo. "The trees are not just connected. They're thinking. Together, the entire forest is like one massive brain." "Can we communicate with it?" "I think so. But it would require a direct neural interface. Someone would have to connect their mind to the network." Jiwoo looked worried. "That sounds dangerous. But if their consciousness gets lost in the system, it's possible. Human brain and the forest network are completely different. But if we could make contact, we might be able to send a message through the network to the other side of the planet. There's a Sylvani communication relay there that could boost our signal to human space." Yoon-hee had discovered something that even Whispering Leaves didn't know. The forest network extended across the entire moon, connecting not just the trees, but also the ancient Sylvani cities hidden in the canopy. The system was so old that most Sylvani had forgotten it existed. When she explained her discovery to Commander Hyunwoo, his eyes lit up with hope for the first time in days. "You're saying we could send a distress signal to Earth? Not just to Earth, to every human colony in this sector? But the neural interface would be extremely dangerous. We'd need someone willing to risk their mind to save everyone else." Without hesitation, Pilot Dong-ho stepped forward. "I'll do it." "Dong-ho, you could die," Hyunwoo said. "Or worse, you could be trapped in the network forever." "Commander, with respect, we're all going to die anyway. At least this way. Maybe some good will come from it. Maybe other human colonies will be warned about the hegemony."
"Dr. Yoon,"
he began, preparing the neural interface equipment. It was cobbled together from medical scanners, computer processors, and biosensors designed to study the local wildlife. She had never attempted anything like this before. She had no choice. As she worked, Whispering Leaves made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He left his watching post and descended through the canopy to the middle levels of the forest. There, hidden among the glowing branches, was a small Sylvani outpost. It was manned by his cousin, Runswith-Dawn, who had been his friend since childhood. Whispering Leaves, Runswith-Dawn greeted him with surprise. "You should be at your observation post." "I need to ask you something," Whispering Leaves said. "The humans are trying to access the forest network. If they succeed, will the council stop them?" Runswith-Dawn looked uncomfortable. "The council has been very clear. We are not to interfere with the humans in any way. If they discover the network, we will simply disconnect their section. But they're trying to call for help. They're going to die if we don't let them send their message. That is not our concern. The laws exist for good reasons, cousin. We cannot save every species that comes to our world." Whispering Leaves felt anger building in his chest. These humans are different. They're not conquerors or destroyers. They're good people trying to survive. Perhaps, but the laws are clear. Return to your post and observe. Do not interfere. As Whispering Leaves made his way back to his position, he passed close to where Dr. Yoon-hee was preparing the neural interface. He could see Pilot Dong-ho lying on a makeshift table, with sensors attached to his head and a direct connection to one of the great trees. "Are you ready?" Dr. Yoon-hee asked. Dong-ho nodded. "Just remember, if something goes wrong, don't try to save me. Complete the mission." I'll do everything I can to bring you back safely. I know you will, but the colony comes first. Dr. Yunhei activated the interface. Dongho's eyes rolled back in his head as his consciousness was pulled into the vast network of the forest. His body went rigid, then relaxed, then began to convulse slightly as his human mind tried to process the alien environment it had entered. Neural activity is off the charts, Jiwoo reported. His brain is being flooded with information. Can you stabilize him? I'm trying. The network is so much bigger than we expected. It's like he's trying to drink from an ocean. In the forest. Network. Dongho's consciousness was being swept along by currents of information he couldn't understand. He felt the thoughts of every tree, every plant, every living thing connected to the system. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. But there was something else in the network. Something old and vast and sleeping. As Dongho's mind touched it, the ancient thing began to stir. Back at the interface site, alarms began going off. Happening? Dr. Yoon demanded. The entire network is activating. Energy readings are spiking all across the forest. Is Dongho causing this? I don't know. But whatever he's found in there, it's been asleep for a very long time. Whispering leaves felt the forest coming alive around him. The trees were pulsing with energy, their bioluminescent patterns growing brighter and more complex. The network was waking up in ways he had never seen before. And then, cutting through the growing excitement, came the sound they had all been dreading, the scream of engines in the upper atmosphere. The hegemony fleet had arrived. Not early. Commander Huyanhwa's voice crackled over the settlement's communication system. This is it, people. They're here. All non-essential personnel to the bunkers. Defense teams to your positions. May whatever gods are listening have mercy on us all. The neural interface was only half complete. Dongho's consciousness was still lost in the forest network. Touching something ancient and powerful, evacuation was not finished. The defenses were not ready, but the enemy was here, and there was no more time to prepare. As the first hegemony ships began their descent toward the surface, Whisper Rinleaves made his choice. He would not watch these brave humans die without trying to help them. The laws of his people had kept them safe, but they had also kept them from doing what was right. Some things, he decided, were more important than safety. The battle for Cairo 7 was about to begin, and the silent watcher in the trees was about to become something more than an observer. The storm before silence was ending. What came next would test the courage of two species and awaken something that had been sleeping. In the forest for thousands of years, the sky above Cairo 7 turned red as the hegemony fleet began their attack. Plasma beams cut through the atmosphere like burning spears, turning the peaceful forest into a nightmare of fire and smoke. The giant trees that had stood for thousands of years began to fall, their bioluminescent glow fading as they died. Commander Hyenwoo crouched behind a makeshift barrier, near the settlement's main power station. Around him, his people fought with everything they had. Colony's defense weapons were meant to stop wild animals, not military warships, but the humans used them anyway. Shield generators are down to 40%, So-young shouted over. The sound of explosions. The main power line is damaged. Can you fix it? I need 10 minutes and 3 people to help me. Take whoever you need. We'll cover you. Hyeonwoo watched as So-young crawled through the burning debris toward the power station. She was risking her life to buy them a few more minutes, knowing it probably wouldn't make any difference. But that was what humans did. They fought even when they couldn't win. High above the battle, Whispering Leaves clung to a burning tree branch and watched the destruction below. The hegemony ground forces had landed and were moving through the forest like a plague. They killed everything in their path. Not just the humans, but also the plants and animals that had done nothing wrong. This was why the Sylvani had learned to hide. The galaxy was full of species like the hegemony, who saw other life as either useful or in the way. The Sylvani had survived by staying invisible and never drawing attention to themselves, but watching the humans fight and die for each other. Whispering Leaves felt something breaking inside him. These people had come to his world with respect, trying to live alongside the forest instead of destroying it. They had shown kindness to each other and curiosity about the life they found here. They deserved better than to die alone, near the center of the settlement. Dr. Yoon-hee was still working frantically with the neural interface. Pilot Dong-ho lay unconscious on the table, his mind lost somewhere in the forest network. The machines around him showed that his brain was active, but she couldn't tell if he was still human or if he had become something else. "Doctor, we need to move her," Assistant Ji-woo said urgently. "The hegemony forces are getting closer. I can't leave him like this. If I disconnect him now, he might never wake up. If we don't leave now, we'll all be dead in 10 minutes. Doctor." Yoon-hee looked at the readings on her screens. Dong-ho's consciousness was deep in the network, farther than she had ever imagined possible. But something strange was happening. The forest itself was responding to him, as if it recognized something familiar in his human mind. "Wait," she said suddenly. "Look at these energy patterns. The network is not just carrying his thoughts, it's amplifying them. What does that mean? I think he's found something big." In the network, Dong-ho's consciousness was no longer alone. The sleeping thing he had touched was waking up, and it was ancient beyond imagination. It had been the forest's guardian long ago, when the Sylvani were young and the galaxy was a different place. The guardian had seen many wars, many species that came and went like seasons. It had watched the Sylvani learn to hide and survive. It had seen the hegemony grow from a small empire into a galactic plague. And now it was seeing humans for the first time. What it saw in Dong-ho's mind surprised it. Here was a species that could have been conquerors, but chose to be builders. A people who could have taken what they wanted but chose to ask permission first. A race that faced extinction but worried more about protecting others than saving themselves. The Guardian began to remember why it had once fought to protect this world. Back on the surface, the battle was going badly for the humans, the settlements. Shields finally failed under the constant bombardment. Buildings that had taken months to build were destroyed in seconds. The humans fell back toward the forest, carrying their wounded and protecting their families. Commander Hyun-woo found himself helping an injured colonist named Minho who had been caught in the collapse of the medical center. The young man's leg was broken, but he was still trying to help others. "Leave me, Commander," Minho said through gritted teeth. "I'm just slowing everyone down." "That's not how we do things," Hyun-woo replied firmly. "We don't leave people behind." He helped Minho toward the evacuation route. Hyun-woo was struck by a falling piece of debris. The impact sent him crashing into a broken wall, and he felt his ribs crack. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to keep moving. Around him, he could see other humans making the same choice. Parents carried children who weren't their own. Soldiers helped civilians instead of seeking cover. Scientists destroyed their research rather than let it fall into enemy hands. The hegemony forces were confused by this behavior. They were used to enemies who fought for themselves, who abandoned the weak when survival was at stake. But every human they cornered was trying to protect someone else. Whispering Leaves watched from his hiding place as 3 humans risked their lives to save Minho from under a burning beam. They could have escaped easily without him, but they refused to leave him behind. One of them, a woman named Hyjin, was badly burned while pulling him to safety. "Why?" Leaves whispered to himself. "Why do you keep trying to save each other?" As if in answer to his question. He heard Commander Hyun-woo's voice calling out to his people as they retreated deeper into the forest. "Stay together. Help anyone who needs it. We're not just fighting for ourselves today, we're fighting for what it means to be human." Those words hit Whispering Leaves like a physical blow. He had spent his life learning to be invisible, to avoid risks, to survive. By staying hidden, but these humans were choosing to be visible, to take risks, to live by helping others. Maybe there was more than one way to survive in the galaxy the surviving humans had reached. A deep ravine, about 3 kilometers from the settlement. It was a natural choke point where a small force could hold off a larger one, at least for a while. Commander Hyun-woo, despite his injuries, was organizing the final defense. Taemin set up the heavy weapons on the ridge. "Soyoung, can you rig any explosives for the narrow part of the ravine?" "Already working on it, sir." "Good. Dr. Yoon-hee, any word on the neural interface?" The doctor looked up from her portable equipment. Dongho is still connected, but something's happening in the network. The energy readings are unlike anything I've ever seen. Is that good or bad? I honestly don't know. Whatever he's found in there, it's been dormant for a very long time. As the humans prepared their last stand, Whisperin' Leaves made his way through the burning forest toward the ravine. He had made his decision. The laws of his people had kept them alive, but they had also kept them from truly living. He would not watch these brave humans die without trying to help. When he reached the edge of the ravine, he could see the hegemony forces approaching. There were hundreds of them, armed with weapons that could cut through stone. The humans had maybe 50 fighters left, most of them wounded, with weapons designed for hunting. Not warfare. It should have been a slaughter, but as Whisperin' Leaves watched, something extraordinary happened. The humans didn't run. They didn't surrender. They didn't even seem afraid. They stood together, ready to fight to the end for each other and for the families hiding in the deeper caves. Commander Hyunwoo, barely able to stand from his injuries, raised his voice so all his people could hear him. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Show them that some things are worth fighting for, even when we can't win. We show them that we choose to stand together, no matter what. The humans cheered, and the sound echoed through the ravine like thunder. In the forest network, Dongho's consciousness finally made full contact with the ancient guardian. The massive intelligence that had been sleeping for millennia looked through human eyes and saw something it had almost forgotten: hope. The guardian began to stir, and with it, the entire forest began to wake up. Whisperin' Leaves felt the change. Immediately, the trees around him started to pulse with energy, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The bioluminescent patterns in the bark began to move faster, forming complex designs that hurt to look at directly. Something was coming. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. The hegemony forces reached the edge of the ravine, just as the first tendrils of awakening power began to spread through the forest. They raised their weapons, confident in their victory. They had no idea what they were about to face. The battle for Kairos 7 was about to become something that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. In the ravine, the humans prepared to make their final stand. In the canopy, a Sylvani observer prepared to break the laws that had governed his people for thousands of years, and deep in the forest network, something ancient and powerful was remembering why it had once been called the Guardian of the Trees. The sky had fallen, but the real battle was just beginning. Whisperin' Leaves had never broken the laws of his people before. For centuries, the Sylvani had survived by staying hidden, by never interfering with the affairs of younger species, as he watched the humans prepare to die for each other. In the ravine below, those ancient laws felt like chains around his heart. He moved through the burning forest with the silence that only his people could achieve. His fur changed color to match the smoke and shadows, making him invisible to the hegemony forces that marched beneath the trees. They had no idea that death was watching them from above. The hegemony soldiers were confident as they approached the ravine. They had superior numbers, better weapons, and orbital support. To them, this was just another cleanup operation. It had done this hundreds of times before on dozens of worlds, but Whisperin' Leaves had seen something in the humans that the hegemony could not understand. These people did not fight for glory or conquest, they fought for love, and that made them far more dangerous than any enemy the hegemony had ever faced on the ravine. Commander Hyunwoo leaned against a boulder, trying to ignore the pain in his ribs. He could barely stand, but he would not let his people see him fall. Around him, the last defenders of New Seoul checked their weapons and said quiet goodbyes to each other. "Sir," Security Chief Taemin approached with a grim expression. "I count at least 300 enemy soldiers approaching from the north. They'll be in firing range in 5 minutes. What about the southern approach? Clear for now, but they're probably just trying to surround us." Hyunwoo nodded. It was what he would have done. The hegemony was not taking any chances. It wanted to make sure no humans escaped to tell others what had happened here. "Any word from Dr. Yoon-hee about the neural interface?" she says. "Dongho is still connected, but something strange is happening in the forest network. The energy readings are off the charts. As if summoned by their conversation, Dr. Yunhai hurried over with her portable equipment. Her face was pale but excited. Commander, I think Dong Ho has found something incredible in the network. The entire forest is responding to his presence. It's like the trees are waking up from a long sleep. Is that good or bad for us? I don't know. But whatever he's touched in there, it's been dormant for thousands of years, and it's getting stronger. In the forest network, Dong Ho's consciousness was floating in an ocean of ancient memories. The guardian that had been sleeping in the depths of the system was fully awake now. It was sharing its knowledge with the human pilot, Dong Ho. Now saw the history of Cairo 7 stretching back millions of years. He saw the first Sylvani learning to live in harmony with the forest. He saw great wars fought between species that no longer existed. He saw the guardian growing tired of conflict, choosing to sleep until it was needed again. Now it was needed. Guardian looked through Dong Ho's memories and saw humanity for the first time. It saw their wars and their peace treaties, their cruelty and their kindness, their fear and their courage. What impressed the Guardian most was how humans could choose to be better than they were. You are young, the Guardian's voice echoed. In Dong Ho's mind, but you have the potential to be something great. Will you help me protect this world? Yes, Dong Ho replied without hesitation. But I need to save my people first. Your people and mine are not so different. Both have learned to survive by helping each other. Perhaps it is time for all of us to work together. Back on the surface, the first hegemony soldiers reached the edge of the ravine. They raised their weapons, ready to begin the final assault. But before they could fire, something extraordinary happened. The trees around them began to move. At first, it was just a subtle shifting of branches. But then, the movement became more obvious. Roots burst from the ground, wrapping around the soldiers' legs. Branches reached down from above, knocking weapons from their hands. The bioluminescent patterns in the bark began to pulse so brightly that it hurt to look at them directly. What is this? Ah! The hegemony commander demanded over his radio. The trees attacking us? Sir, all units are reporting the same thing. The forest is fighting back. Whisper and Leaves watched the chaos below with amazement. He had lived in this forest his entire life, but he had never seen anything like this. The Guardian was not just awake, he was angry, but the hegemony forces were adapting quickly. They began using fire weapons to burn the attacking trees and plasma cutters to slice through the grasping roots. The forest's defense was impressive, but it might not be enough. That was when Whisper and Leaves made his choice. He dropped from the canopy like a shadow, landing silently behind a group of hegemony soldiers. His claws, designed for climbing trees, were also perfect for cutting through armor. Before the soldiers knew what was happening, 3 of them were down. Contact from above, one of the survivors shouted. We're under attack by local wildlife. Right. Whisper and Leaves almost laughed at that. Wildlife, if only they knew what they were really facing. He moved through the enemy ranks like a ghost, using his natural camouflage to stay invisible. The hegemony soldiers were trained to fight other humanoids with predictable weapons. They had no idea how to deal with an enemy who could become invisible and strike from any direction. In the ravine, the humans watched in amazement as their enemies began to fall back in confusion. Trees were grabbing soldiers, roots were tripping them, and something was moving through their ranks too fast to see clearly. What's happening out there? Timon asked. I think we just got some help, Commander Hyanwu replied. But from who? His question was answered when a figure appeared at the edge of the ravine. It was tall and covered in fur that shifted color like the forest itself. Its eyes were large and golden, and it moved with a grace that no human could match. The humans raised their weapons instinctively, but the creature held up its hands in a gesture of peace. When it spoke, its voice was soft but clear. I am Whisper and Leaves of the Sylvani. I have come to help you. The humans stared in shock. They had suspected there was intelligent life in the forest, but they had never made contact. Now, in their darkest hour, this alien was offering to help them. Why? Commander Hyanwu asked. Why would you help us? Whisper and Leaves looked at the wounded human commander, then at the other humans who were ready to die for each other. He thought of his people's laws, of the safety that came from staying hidden. Then he thought of what he had learned by watching. These brave strangers. Because some things are more important than staying safe, he said. Because you have shown me what it means to be truly alive. Dr. Yuni suddenly looked up from her equipment. Commander, something's happening with the neural interface. Dong Ho is trying to communicate. The portable screen flickered, then displayed a message in simple text. Guardian is awake. Need to reach the others. Need to reach the others. Hyan Wu asked. Whispered -in leaves understood immediately. The Sylvani cities. If your pilot can reach them through the network, he can warn my people about what's happening. But the main communication hub is in the heart of the forest. It would be very dangerous to reach. How dangerous? The hegemony forces are between us and the hub. And even if we get there, my people may not listen. They have been following the laws of non-interference for a very long time. Commander Hyan Wu tried to stand, but his injuries made him stumble. Pain shot through his broken ribs, and he would have fallen if Whispering Leaves hadn't caught him. You are badly hurt, the Sylvani observed. You should not be moving. I have to. My people are counting on me. Then let me help you. 8. Paths through the forest that the hegemony has not found. I can carry you to the communication hub. You would do that for us? Whisper Leves looked at the broken human commander, then at the others who were ready to follow him into certain danger. He thought of his cousin, Runs with Dawn, who would be disappointed in him. I thought of the Council of Elders, who would exile him for breaking their laws. Then he thought of what it would feel like to live with himself. If he let these good people die without trying to help them? Yes, he said simply. I will carry you as far as I need to. As the forest battle raged around them, an unlikely alliance was born. The silent watcher who had observed from the shadows for so long was about to become something more. The choice of silence was over. Now came the test of courage, and in the depths of the forest network, the ancient guardian smiled as it felt the first stirrings of hope it had known in thousands of years. The real battle for Cairo 7 was about to begin. Whispering Leaves had never carried another being on his back before. The Sylvani were solitary creatures, each responsible for their own survival. But as he lifted the injured Commander Hyanwu onto his shoulders, he felt something new. Weight was not just physical, it was carrying the hopes of both their species. The communication hub is 20 kilometers through the deep forest, he explained to the humans. The path is dangerous, even without the hegemony forces hunting us. How long will it take? Dr. Yoon, he asked, packing her portable equipment. Days if we move carefully. Less if we take risks. We don't have 3 days, Hyan Wu said weakly. The orbital bombardment will start again soon. The people in the bunkers won't survive that. Then we take risks, Whispering Leaves replied. The journey began at sunset on the second day of the battle. The forest was on fire in many places, and the hegemony forces were everywhere. But Whispering Leaves knew paths that had been secret for thousands of years. He carried the human commander through hidden valleys and forgotten caves, never stopping to rest. Behind them, the other humans followed as best they could. Dr. Yoonhee monitored the neural interface that kept Dong Ho connected to the forest. Network. Security Chief Taemin and Engineer Saw Young took turns carrying the wounded. They all knew that if they were caught, it would mean death for everyone as they traveled. Hyanwu drifted in and out of consciousness. During his waking moments, he shared stories of human history with his alien carrier. He told Whispering Leaves about the wars his people had fought, the mistakes they had made, and the lessons they had learned. We used to be like the hegemony, Hyanwu said quietly as they moved through a moonlit canyon. We conquered and took what we wanted, but we learned that strength without wisdom is just destruction. How did you learn this? We nearly destroyed ourselves, war after war, until we realized we had to choose between being conquerors or being human. We chose to be human. Whispering Leaves pondered this as he ran. His people had chosen safety over everything else, but maybe there was another way to survive. Maybe there was a way to be both safe and brave. The first day of their journey was the hardest. Hegemony patrols were everywhere, and the forest was still burning in many places. They had to hide several times, crouching in caves or under fallen trees while enemy soldiers passed overhead. During one such hiding, Whisper and Leaves felt Commander Hayenwa's body growing cold. The human's injuries were worse than he had admitted. Without medical treatment, he might not survive the journey. "Leave me here," Hayenwu whispered. "Take the others and complete the mission." "No," Whisper and Lev said firmly. "Your people long enough to know that you do not abandon each other. I will not abandon you, but the mission. The mission is to save lives. Your life is part of that mission." Dr. Yoon, he worked frantically with her limited medical supplies. To stabilize the commander, she had no proper equipment, but she did what she could. The other humans shared their food and water, even though they all knew it might mean starving before they reached their destination. Watching them care for each other, Whisper and Leaves felt something breaking inside his chest. His people had survived by thinking only of themselves. But these humans had found a way to be strong by thinking of others first. The second day brought new challenges. The hegemony forces had figured out that the surviving humans were heading toward the deep forest. They began setting traps and ambushes along the most likely routes. But Whisper and Leaves knew paths that no map had ever recorded. He led the group through underground rivers and across bridges made of living branches. His knowledge of the forest kept them alive, but the constant travel was exhausting him. Sylvani were built for endurance, but even they had limits. Whisper and Leaves had been moving for 2 days without sleep, carrying a burden that grew heavier with each step. His muscles ached, his vision was blurring, and his usually perfect balance was becoming uncertain. "You need to rest," Dr. Yoonhai told him during a brief stop. "You're pushing yourself too hard. Rest is a luxury we cannot afford," he replied. "The neural interface shows that your pilot is still connected to the network, but his life signs are weakening. If we do not reach the communication hub soon, we will lose him." It was true. Dongho's consciousness had been in the forest network for 3 days now. His body was alive, but barely. The connection was keeping him suspended between life and death, and that balance could not last much longer. On the 3rd day, they encountered their worst challenge yet. A full company of hegemony soldiers had set up a checkpoint directly in their path. There was no way around it and no time to find an alternate route. "We're trapped," Taemin said quietly. "There are too many of them," Whisper and Leaves studied the enemy position. The soldiers were well armed and alert. In a direct fight, the humans would be slaughtered. But there might be another way. "I will create a distraction," he said. "When the soldiers move to investigate, you slip past them." "That's suicide," Hayenwu protested, even in his weakened state. "They'll kill you, perhaps. But you will live to complete the mission. We don't leave people behind," Saoyoung said firmly. "That's not how humans work." Whisper and Leaves looked at these stubborn creatures who refused to let him sacrifice himself for them. Back home, his people would have called them foolish. But he was beginning to think that this kind of foolishness might be the most important thing in the universe. "Then we find another way," he said. "Together." The solution came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yoonhai had been monitoring the forest network through her portable equipment, and she noticed something interesting. "The network is still active in this area," she reported. "If Dongho can communicate with the trees directly, maybe he can help us." They activated the communication link, and Dongho's voice came through weakly, but clearly. "I can, feel the forest, around you," he said. "The Guardian, wants to help, but it needs permission." "Permission for what?" "To show the hegemony. What happens, when you anger, the forest." What happened next would be remembered in hegemony military reports for decades to come. The trees around the checkpoint began to move with purpose and intelligence. Roots erupted from the ground, wrapping around vehicles and pulling them underground. Branches reached down from above, plucking soldiers from their posts and depositing them far away. Unharmed but thoroughly frightened, the hegemony forces retreated in panic, leaving the path clear. "How?" Taemin asked in amazement. "The Guardian is not just a consciousness," Dr. Yoonhai explained, "connected to every living thing in the forest. When it needs to, it can make the entire ecosystem work together." As they continued to hoard the communication hub, Whisper and Leaves felt the weight on his shoulders differently. Commander Hyanwu was still injured, still dying, but he was also still fighting, still trying to save his people even when he could barely save himself. "Why do you do it?" Whisper and Leaves asked as they climbed a steep hill. "Why do you keep fighting when you know you might not survive?" "'Cause someone has to," Hyanwu replied. "'Cause if good people do nothing, then evil wins. 'Cause the universe is a better place when we try to help each other, even when it costs everything, especially." Then, they reached the communication hub just as the third day was ending. It was a massive tree that grew in the center of a hidden valley, its trunk so wide that it could have housed a small city. Bioluminescent patterns covered its bark like a living computer screen. But they were not alone. Surrounding the great tree were dozens of Sylvani, all watching the approaching humans with expressions of fear and anger. "You have brought strangers to the sacred grove," one of them said to Whisper and Leaves. "You have broken the oldest laws of our people." "Yes," Whisper and Leaves replied as he gently lowered Commander Hyanwu to the ground. "And I would do it." Again, the confrontation that followed would determine the fate of both species. The burden of 3 days had brought them to this moment. Now they would discover if courage and compassion could overcome fear and tradition. Whisper and Leaves stood between the humans and his own people, ready to defend the aliens who had taught him what it meant to be truly alive. The final test was about to begin. The sacred grove was silent except for the gentle pulsing of the great tree's bioluminescent patterns. Dozens of Sylvani surrounded the exhausted humans, their golden eyes reflecting anger and fear. These were the elders and guardians of the forest, the keepers of laws that had protected their people for thousands of years. At the center of the confrontation stood Whisper and Leaves, still carrying the injured Commander Hyanwu. He had not slept for 3 days. His body was pushed beyond its limits, but his resolve had never been stronger. "You have violated the most sacred law of our people," spoke Elder Moves with Shadows, the oldest of the Sylvani present. "You have brought outsiders to the heart of our world?" "Yes," Whisper and Leaves replied simply. "And I have never been more certain of anything in my life. These humans will bring destruction to our forests, just as all the others have done. The law exists to protect us. The law exists to protect us from making difficult choices," Whisper and Leaves corrected. "But sometimes the right choice is also the difficult one." Commander Hyanwu, despite his pain, struggled to speak. "We did not come here to harm your world. We came seeking only a place to live in peace," Elder Moves with Shadows said bitterly. "Every species speaks of peace when they first arrive. Then they begin to take what they want. Then judge us by our actions, not our words," Dr. Uni said, stepping forward. "In 6 months on your world, what have we taken that we did not ask for first?" The elder paused, clearly unprepared for this question. The truth was that the humans had been remarkably respectful of the forest. They had asked permission before taking water from the rivers, studied the local ecosystem before clearing any land, and had actually improved the health of the areas where they settled. "That means nothing," another Sylvani said. "You are still young. In time, you will become like all the others." "Maybe," Hyanwu admitted, "but we're trying to be better." Ow. Before anyone could answer, the great tree began to pulse more rapidly. The bioluminescent patterns in its bark grew brighter, and a new voice joined the conversation. It was Dong Ho, speaking through the forest network itself. "The Guardian wants to speak," his voice echoed from the tree. "It has something to show you." The patterns in the bark began to form images. The Sylvani gasped as they recognized what they were seeing. It was their own history, but seen through the eyes of the ancient Guardian. They saw their ancestors, brave and bold, fighting to protect their world from invaders. They saw the gradual retreat into hiding as the galaxy became more dangerous. They saw the slow transformation from a people who fought for what was right to a people who simply tried to survive. "We were not always as we are now, the Guardians," a voice whispered through the network. "Once we stood against evil, no matter the cost. When did we become so afraid of living that we forgot how to be alive?" The images changed, showing the recent battle. The Sylvani watched in amazement as the humans fought against impossible odds, not for conquest or glory, but simply to protect each other. They saw acts of courage and sacrifice that their own people had not displayed in centuries. These humans are not perfect, the Guardian continued, but they are trying to be better than they were. They have remembered something we have forgotten, that some things are worth fighting for. Elder Move's wish shadows looked troubled. The law has kept us safe for thousands of years. Safe, yes, Whisper in Leaves said. But what is the point of surviving if we never truly live? The debate might have continued, but it was interrupted by a new crisis. The hegemony forces had found the sacred grove. Alarms began sounding throughout the forest network as hundreds of enemy soldiers surrounded the great tree. They had followed the humans' trail, and now they had discovered the secret heart of Sylvani. Civilization. Surrender now, the hegemony commander's voice boomed through amplifiers. You have 60 seconds to come out with your hands visible, or we will burn the entire grove. The Sylvani looked at each other in panic. Their greatest fear had come true. The humans had led their enemies to the most sacred place in their world. Sorry, Commander, Hyenwu said weakly. This is our fault. Should have found another way. No, Whisper in Leaves said firmly. This is not your fault. This is the result of our own fear. We have hidden for so long that we forgot how to fight back. What can we do? Dr. Yunhai asked. There are too many of them. The answer came from an unexpected source. A young Sylvani who had been listening to the conversation began to step forward. They had heard the Guardian's words, seen the images of their ancestors, and watched the humans' courage. We can fight, said one of them, a female named Dance's Wits, Starlight. We can remember what it means to be Sylvani. The law forbids it, Elder Moves with Shadows protested. Then maybe it's time to change the law, she replied. More young Sylvani joined her, and even some of the older ones began to nod in agreement. They had lived in fear for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to have hope. 30 seconds, the hegemony commander announced. Commander Hyenwu tried to stand, but his injuries were too severe. I won't let you fight our battle. For us, it's not your battle anymore, Whisper in Leaves said. It's everyone's battle. The hegemony doesn't just want to destroy humans. They want to destroy everything that doesn't serve their empire. Then we fight together, Dr. Yunhai declared. Humans and Sylvani, side by side. What happened next would change the galaxy forever. The great tree began to pulse with energy unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The Guardian, awakened by the humans' courage and the Sylvani's renewed hope, reached out through the entire forest network. Every tree, every plant, every living thing on Cairo 7 became part of a single, coordinated organism. The hegemony soldiers found themselves facing an enemy they had never imagined. The ground beneath their feet came alive, roots reaching up to entangle them. Trees moved like living creatures, their branches becoming weapons and shields. The very air seemed to fight against them as spores and pollens made it difficult to breathe, but the forest was not acting alone. The Sylvani, inspired by the humans' example, emerged from their hiding places for the first time in centuries. They fought alongside the awakened ecosystem, their natural abilities enhanced by their connection to the forest network, the humans. Even wounded and exhausted did their part. Dr. Yunhai coordinated the network connection, keeping Dongho stable. While he guided the Guardian, Engineer Soyoung worked with Sylvani technicians to boost the forest's energy systems. Security Chief Taemin helped organize the defense alongside Sylvani warriors, and at the center of it all, Whisper in Leaves stood guard over Commander Hyenwu, ready to defend the human who had taught him what courage really meant. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. The hegemony forces, accustomed to fighting predictable enemies, were completely overwhelmed by a planet that had become a single intelligent weapon. Their ships were pulled from the sky by massive vines. Their soldiers were captured by trees that moved with purpose and intelligence. Their communications were disrupted by electromagnetic fields generated by the forest itself. Within hours, the hegemony fleet was in full retreat. Those who survived would carry stories of the awakened world back to their empire. Stories that would make other hegemony commanders think twice before attacking forest worlds. But the real victory was not in the battle itself. It was in what happened afterward. As the sun rose on the fourth day, humans and Sylvani worked together to heal the damage done to the forest. They shared their knowledge, their skills, and their dreams for the future. The barriers between species built by fear and misunderstanding began to crumble. Commander Heinwu, finally receiving proper medical treatment, recovered slowly but steadily. Pilot Dong Ho was successfully extracted from the forest network, forever changed by his experience but alive and human. The Guardian, no longer alone, settled into a new role as a bridge between all the thinking beings on KYROS-7. Whisper-in Leaves found himself in an unexpected position. The Sylvani elders, humbled by recent events, asked him to help them rewrite the ancient laws. The humans, grateful for his sacrifice, offered him a place in their society. He chose to become something new, an ambassador between worlds, helping other species learn to work together. Years later, when historians studied the events on Kairos 7, they would call it the day the galaxy learned a new way to survive. Not through conquest or hiding, but through cooperation and courage. The silent cat of the trees had looked on for centuries, but when the moment came, he had chosen to act. In carrying a broken human for 3 days without sleep, he had carried the hopes of 2 civilizations into a brighter future. And in the deep forest, where the great tree still pulsed with ancient wisdom, the Guardian smiled. It had been awakened by the courage of strangers, and it would never sleep again. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but it was also full of possibilities for those brave enough to reach out to each other. The dawn of understanding had begun. It would spread from world to world, species to species, till the darkness of fear and hatred was replaced by the light of cooperation and hope. In the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Not the defeat of an enemy, but the birth of something new. Something that proved the universe was big enough for all who were willing to share it. The story of Kairos 7 would be remembered for generations, not as a tale of war, but as the day 2 species learned to trust each other. And in that trust, they found something more valuable than safety or victory. They found a future worth living for.